Hello everyone, Brian Brown doing here again. Today we're playing Legacy instead of Standard, so get to play a sweet Jund deck in Legacy. I've played this at the last two opens and I finished 4th in one and lost my win in round in the other, so I've had some success with the deck and I think it's a really sweet deck and I really like to play it, so I'm hoping it continues to be a good deck and I can play it some more. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the cards I have in the deck here. First of all, 10 fetch lands. First, like the mana base here, this is kind of a staple of Legacy, is like fetch lands, dual lands. All these fetches get all these duals, and fetch lands also turn on Deathrite Shaman to allow him to produce mana for you. So they really serve a huge purpose in the deck, and really these are what makes the deck like work smoothly. And normally a lot of lists play like a single Taiga, but I ended up cutting it for a Graven Cairns, and the reason is that I'm trying to cast Hymn to Tourach and Liliana, but I have 4 Grove of the Burn Willows and 4 Wastelands in my deck that don't produce mana to cast either of these cards. So what Graven Cairns does is it lets your Grove of the Burn Willows produce black for Hymn to Tourach or Liliana. So that's the reason for a card like that. We have 4 Wastelands and 4 Groves, like I mentioned, and these cards are really important in this deck because one of the things about Jund is I'm playing 24 lands and I have Deathrite Shamans to accelerate my mana base. So most of the time I'm hitting a lot more land drops than my opponents. And a lot of times I don't need to play more than 4 lands because Bloodbraid Elf at 4 is like the top of my curve. So for that reason, Wasteland's just a really good way to punish opposing mana bases and like set my opponents back a lot. And I really like playing Wasteland a lot in Deathrite Shaman decks because you can go like turn 1 Deathrite Shaman and then turn 2 you can Wasteland your opponent, which for one lets Deathrite utilize the graveyard to accelerate you because now there's lands in the graveyard, but it also means that you're a mana ahead of your opponent and your opponent's like back to 0 lands or just 1 land. And then Grove of the Burn Willows is a combo with Punishing Fire. Punishing Fire, whenever you gain a life, or whenever your opponent gains a life, you can return it to your hand, and Grove of the Burn Willows lets them gain a life by producing red mana. So that's like one of the combos of the deck that really makes this deck very resilient against any kind of fair deck because you can just recur and cast Punishing Fire over and over and over again, which is insanely good against like planeswalkers and creatures, and eventually will kill them by just doing 1 damage to them at a time. As for the creature base, we pretty much have the standard Jund creatures from Modern, Legacy, pretty much every format ever. Yeah, this is basically the Modern Jund deck in Legacy, but it's really good still. So Deathrite Shaman kind of does everything, accelerates you. It serves as graveyard hate, and it can just kill them by doing damage to them over time. Old Bobby C, or Dark Confidant, is like one of the best creatures in this deck. And in Modern, I never really found him to be very good, but in Legacy, he's exceptional because you don't have to do a lot of damage to yourself with your mana base in Legacy, unlike Modern. So the life loss from Dark Confidant is a lot less punishing. And a lot of decks in Legacy, like a lot of the combo decks, just don't play removal spells, so he does live a lot. And you know, if he stays in play for like a bunch of turns, you're just going to win the game. And then Tarmogoyf, much like Shaquille O'Neal, Tarmogoyf has not retired from being big. He's still like a 5/6 or 6/7 a lot of the time. This deck's capable of making him a 5/6 by virtue of land, creature, instant, sorcery, and planeswalker. And your opponent sometimes will have enchantments or artifacts to make him even bigger. So he's just like the best threat at 2 mana you can possibly play. And then Bloodbraid Elf is Bloodbraid Elf. I mean, Bloodbraid into Hymn to Tourach, like Bloodbraid into Blightning from standard years past. So it's pretty insane. And some of the spells here, we have to have discard spells in this deck because otherwise we're just like dead to any combo deck. And these cards are usually pretty good against most other decks too. So you definitely want to play these. I already talked about Punishing Fire, and then Lightning Bolt is just another very good removal spell, and it can also just go to the face late in the game to finish the game out. But you definitely want cards like Lightning Bolt in your deck to kill like opposing Deathrite Shamans or Dark Confidants or Stoneforge Mystics or the like. And then Abrupt Decay is awesome in Legacy. It's good against almost every deck. Has something you can hit with it. There's a lot of like really rough enchantments, like Rest in Peace, for example, destroys this deck. because it shuts out Deathrite Shaman and Tarmogoyf and Punishing Fire. And, you know, Abrupt Decay is a great answer to that, as well as just being a versatile removal spell. And then Liliana of the Veil, and I think Liliana of the Veil really shines in Legacy more than any other format. And the reason is that she's actually just very good against almost every single deck. Against like a lot of the combo decks, her discard ability, making them discard a card every turn, really sets them back. And against some of them, like Belcher and Storm, that require a critical mass of cards to go off, it can actually just prevent them from ever winning the game. And her Edict ability is also good against some combo decks, like the ones that are putting into play Progenitus or Emrakul or Gristlebrand. But it's also very good against other creature decks too, like killing a Tarmogoyf or killing a Dark Confidant or Deathrite Shaman. And then her ultimate doesn't come up that often, but usually when you ultimate her, you win the game. But this is the Jund deck, and pretty solid deck, very good against any fair deck. Has game against combo, but it's not the best. But talk a little bit about the sideboard. We have 3 Duresses, which complement our main deck discard against combo decks, and they also sometimes come in against some of the control decks, like Blue-White Miracles, for example. One of the issues with cards like Duress and the main deck discard is Jund is pretty much just dead to Leyline of Sanctity, but I don't think there's really anything you can do about that, so you just have to hope they don't have it or don't draw it. Sylvan Library is like a really good card against a lot of the fair decks. The Jund Mirror, for example, is the main reason I want this card. Lets you just set up your draws, lets your Bloodbraids be a lot better, lets your Dark Confidants not deal a lot of damage to you, etc., and can just draw you more cards. It's kind of like the green Jace, I've heard some people call it. So we have 4 Pyroblast. This card is just the best card in our sideboard. It's good against so many decks in Legacy. Blue is by far the most popular color people play in Legacy, and Pyroblast is good against pretty much every blue deck. Counter their important spells or kill their important permanents like Delvers or Jaces or what have you. Obstinate Baloth is a new card I put in here, and I really like it a lot for... it's basically for the Jund Mirror, mostly. So if they like Thoughtseize you, or like Hymn to Tourach you and you discard Obstinate Baloth, or they +1 Liliana, you can discard Obstinate Baloth and have it coming directly into play. And it's also 4/4, so it dodges Lightning Bolt, and it's 4 mana, so it dodges Abrupt Decay, so it's kind of tough for them to kill as well. Nihil Spellbomb is basically for Dredge. Even though we have Deathrite Shamans as graveyard hate, it's still like not really enough against decks like Reanimator and Dredge. You still want a little bit more. So that's where Nihil Spellbomb comes in. And this card is sometimes good in some of the fair matchups too. Like any deck playing Lingering Souls, you want to bring these in. The last one is Mindbreak Trap. And like I had mentioned before, Jund's a little weak to combo decks. Mindbreak Trap hedges a bit against decks like Belcher or Storm that can kill you on turn 1. And you want to have some way to interact with them so you don't just die before you get to cast a Thoughtseize. But this is a sideboard, and hopefully I'll be able to show you some of the awesome things that Jund can do in Legacy.